That's my secret, cat. I'm always angry.
Alright. I ran out of patience. On the roost!
Hey everyone, Captain, big fan of Spider-Man.
Avengers! Assemble.
Hello, Peter.
Hello and welcome to the Infinity Saga and Beyond, an MCU fan podcast. My name is Jordan, and with me, as always, recapping Loki Season 2, Casey McGeorge.
Oh, how's it going, everybody?
Going good. Or well, I guess. Whatever the appropriate grammatical correct one is. We are here talking Loki Season 2. We record these we record the first two on Fridays. We're going to shift the schedule around starting next week. But so we try to record these as close to the show as we can to get these things out and into the world for people to discuss and listen to our thoughts. Loki Season 2, Episode 2 was called Breaking Brad, written by Eric Martin, directed by Dan DeLeeuw, and aired October 12th, 2023 on Disney+. And the synopsis was, with the TVA on the verge of a temporal meltdown, Loki and Mobius will stop at nothing to find Sylvie. Casey, just your initial thoughts here on the second episode of the second season.
I like it. I'm getting into it so far. I'm liking some of the old school nostalgia with the McDonald's from the 80s there. Takes me back. Kind of curious if this might be one of the first shows that Marvel's going through with their new outlook on television shows.
Apparently this was still the older model, but I'll have some stuff to say about it for sure.
Okay. But yeah, I'm digging it so far. It's some of it's a little confusing, but I had to. I'll be all right.
My initial thoughts here on this episode is I really liked it. This is the one everyone said was the weakest out of the first four that the critics got to see. If this is the weakest it gets in these first four, I feel like we're in pretty good shape for episodes 3 and 4. One thing I really like about this show so far, in season 2 specifically, is it feels like each episode is an actual episode, right? I don't get confused thinking back to, oh, what episode did this thing happen in? Because they've had very good plot lines in these, in the sense of like last week is the one where they try to fix the temporal loom. This week, they go after Brad, right? I mean, like that is what TV shows usually are. You know, a 1 week is this episode, the next week is a different episode. And just the fact that it feels episodic, but yet there's still the serialized nature of the storyline continuing in each thing, feels like what it should be. And I think this, while it may not be the one that they started their new model on, I think this is kind of where they're starting to base it off of. Eric Martin took over for the guy who wrote Michael Waldron, who wrote Doctor Strange: Multiverse of Madness. And when he was writing Multiverse of Madness, so he wrote some of Loki, then he had to go off and do Multiverse of Madness, and Eric Martin stepped in, and I think he was the script, like the writer that was on set in season 1. And now he's taken over the show. And I think if you had to say who's the showrunner, it's Eric Martin. He's the one that's probably on set. He's been the one writing the show now in season 2, and every episode his name is on it. And I think this is where they're kind of basing it off, because also in that report, and I did like a short episode, if people want to go back and hear like my full thoughts, I did like a 30-minute episode of it midweek when the news broke. I think this is what they're kind of basing it off of. This is the first show to have a second season. they now want to start leaning into having more shows that have second and third seasons. And I think with how popular Loki season 1 was, that kind of shows them that we shouldn't have these big gaps, right? Like, we don't know, Casey. We enjoyed She-Hulk. We have no idea when she's showing up again. And that's the kind of stuff they need to
if
avoid.
she's showing up again, yeah.
Right. That's the stuff they need to avoid, because you watch a TV show like we did when we covered Superstore because we love the characters and we love the situations. Sometimes we hate the characters like Casey and Mateo. But, you watch the show to spend that 30 minutes, 50 minutes with the characters. And that's kind of what the theme of my thing was last week, right? When we talked about episode 1, I was just happy to be back in the TVA world, having Mobius and Loki interact. We shouldn't have to wait 5 years for them to show up in a movie. So, like, the downside with that is something I am ready to say I'm fine with, and that is the fact that it'll probably be less connectivity into the movies, because by the time that they write season 3 of Loki, if it gets a third season, they may not be able to have him be in something else because either he's filming at that time, or season 3 is going to come out before the movie, or then it's going to get pushed to after the movie if something happens. It's going to get a little bit more complicated for them. But I'm fine with that. If not every character has to appear in, like, Secret Wars, right? Like, we don't need... They're making a show about Wonder Man, who is like a stuntman, actor, also superhero, but his side job is working in Hollywood. We don't need him to show up in Secret Wars. You can have him be in the TV show.
Going back to what you said when we talked about She-Hulk, you talked about Mr. Fantastic, or whatever the guy's name was, who was like one of the Great Lakes Avengers or something.
Oh yeah, the Mr. Immortal.
Yeah, like we don't need him franchising out the Avengers. We don't need to see the franchising out of the Avengers in the movies, right? I think WandaVision was really special because that continued the story and kind of bridged the gap between the end of the Infinity Saga, and it gave us its own story about Wanda and Vision, mainly Wanda, in the aftermath of the Infinity Saga, and then kind of bridge the gap to what was coming next, right? And then, but then it is eventually leading to whatever the new TV show is called, because I don't want to say a name, because by the time this comes out, it might have changed names again.
Agatha.
Yeah. But what I'm saying, like, it could be a whole different name by the time this episode comes out in a couple days, right? Like, we don't know. But, so, like, those are great. But like you said, we don't necessarily need some of these other things. I watched Loki. Loki definitely can kind of continue on with his own. He doesn't really, to me, especially because he's kind of a legacy character at this point.
And he has his own world. He doesn't have to interact with anyone.
He doesn't need to be involved with any of the new Avengers or whatever they're called or anything like that. He's got his own thing going on right now that he's fully enveloped in. He can just stay in that world. Maybe in some weird way in a movie down the road, maybe he can pop in and do a cameo or something. And that might tie in to like season 3 or 4, but it doesn't necessarily have to. It could just be like a weird, fun spot. Like what was I think it was Free Guy, where Ryan Reynolds was filming a commercial, I think for his alcohol that he has.
I think it was actually the Netflix movie that he was in, where like the car was blown up in the background. Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah, I don't think it was a Netflix one. I think it was Free Guy, but yeah, you know the one I'm talking about, where he was filming a commercial for his gin or vodka or whatever it was. And then there was a scene from the movie that actually was playing out behind him that when you watch the commercial, you didn't know about unless you watched the movie. And even then, you probably didn't know until a bunch of those listicle things showed up and then you saw the video and it matched up. She-Hulk is another one. Like, she can literally just continue in her own world, right? They're in Los Angeles.
Yeah, they built that world so well, with having the quirky side characters, like you said, with the Great Lake Avengers, the the law firm that she works at, and then
The interesting
that
hook
worked
of the
very
fact
well.
that she's a lawyer and she's not
Yeah,
only dealing with crime and everything, she's dealing with either defending or maybe trying to prosecute some of these supervillains or other people and like all these other things. It
and you
opens
can
up
have
so
her
many
show
different things
up.
you can do.
She can show up in a movie, but like they're if so, she's not probably going to reference stuff that happens, because then you can have that happen at any point after season 1. Meaning, like when you watch season 1 of the TV show and you see her show up in Secret Wars, as long as they don't mention like something that happens, you can watch them out of any order, and that's how it should be, because there's going to be somebody that watches the movie and sees her and says, "Oh, I got to watch her show because I really liked her character," and then they can just binge the show. Like we kind of got to get away from, and this is what they were talking about in the article too, because Brad Winderbaum, who's an executive for Marvel Television now, um, and part of the Marvel like Parliament, the ones that help plot everything, he was saying that they want you to watch the shows for the characters and not necessarily like feel like homework almost of,
Because
oh,
you
this
have to
movie's
keep
coming
up
out.
with what's going to happen in the
Yeah,
movie.
yeah, because it's going to get to a point where you can't. And there's people I know that like you, Casey, that haven't seen everything, and that's fine, because they'll explain, like for the Marvels, they'll explain Miss Marvel in it, and nobody's going to miss a beat really, because look, there's people that watched Endgame and Infinity War and had seen none of the other ones, but it was a
I don't
huge
see how
movie.
that. Now, I will say
Well, it's a
that's
huge movie. They just win,
preposterous.
you know. But
But
they either, some of them caught up beforehand. Some of them were just like, maybe I saw Avengers 1. Oh, this new one is supposed to be really good. Let me go see
Iron
Infinity
Man
War.
1 and like Captain America, and they're like, okay,
Right.
sure, why not?
And you get enough of the gist from the character dynamics. And then, look, if you like it, you go back and watch the other ones, and there's stuff for you to see. So, I don't know.
I think
That article made me feel so much more confident, sans the headline. You know, the headline sounded a little sensational. Read the article, and I was like, this is what I want. I want
think
them to have
Jessica
more.
Dow would be
Yeah.
perfect to do that for She-Hulk. Like, if
I'm
there are
assuming
gonna be more,
if she gets season 2, she'll probably be the showrunner, is what I would guess.
like she's created such a great world. Those characters have been developed really well, and we've got to know certain things about them and how they interact. And just to continue on, I think she would be, if that's not something she does, it would be so disappointing, because it's just been, even like the last episode where they had the fourth wall breaks, it was so perfect.
Yeah, especially if you watch. I know that didn't hit for everyone. Like, I know my dad didn't like the finale. He liked it up till then. I know some other people didn't like the finale. And, you know, I can try to justify that by being like, well, it's like exactly like the She-Hulk comics. For some people it'll land. Some people don't like fourth wall breaks like that, or, you know, because it was gearing up for something, you know, and then it kind of did its own thing to resolve it. But for some people that worked, for some people it didn't. But I think she's the one that you would still hire for a season 2, and, you know, it could be more episodic if you wanted to. And we kind of had that with She-Hulk. There were some episodes where it was like, it felt like a normal sitcom. You didn't have to like worry about, oh, the last 3 weeks, what this storyline's been building up. You know, it was just having fun. But yeah, I'm feeling very, very excited for the future of Marvel Television, thanks to that article now. So if anybody just saw the headline and said, this is a mess, please go read it and listen to my other episode about it. I kind of go a little bit more in depth with it. And hopefully with them going forward, it's a little bit more streamlined, and it's going to be more like old television, where they actually have a pilot, like writing a pilot, writing a show Bible, stuff like that. That's very important before you're sinking $150 million into a TV show. It's kind of mind boggling that they didn't do that before. Okay, with this episode, Breaking Brad, obviously a reference to Breaking Bad, but also I like how it also is not just a reference, it works. The whole episode, they're trying to break Brad down and get him to talk. So I like the way that they did that. It wasn't just like a cheap pun. But yeah, this episode kind of starts off here with like the whole what's it called, the movie
Recap.
premiere. Well, yeah, we have the recap, but we have the movie premiere where we see a guy that we've known as X5 in the last episode, and the one I don't know, General Lady, General Docs, right? It was telling him like we have to get Sylvie, all this kind of stuff, and then we see him kind of loving, right, being a movie star. This is
In
Brad
1977 or
Wolf.
78 or whatever.
1977. Yep, on the sacred timeline. So he's not on a branched timeline, which I guess means this was always supposed to happen for him. But you know, he's playing a character called the Zaniac, and I wanted to shout this out too because this is not something I was familiar with. But Zaniac is an actual comic book character, and he actually fought Thor at one point, but he gained superhuman strength and and the ability to create knives out of pure energy.
Okay.
So in the original comics, Wolf is also a movie star, just like this, and was transformed by radiation from the Manhattan Project. But yeah, so I don't know. Some people say, well, maybe he'll actually go under the Zaniac transformation in real life as well. I think this is just their way of giving a nice nod to a very Z tier character, right? You can talk about A and B tier characters. This is Z list.
I don't know. Does it
Zaniac,
get any
but
more Z-list than the Great Lakes Avengers there or whatever?
oh, this is, I actually heard of them before. I never heard of Zaniac. So yeah, this is very Z list.
Oh, okay. Speaking of that, so I was watching one of those Watch Mojo or something like that list,
Mm-hmm.
and one of them was about like old sodas that we want back. And one of them had like an old, I guess Pepsi had an old caffeinated soda back in the day, or like it was like an old energy drink soda back in the day that had like more caffeine, and they were showing footage. It showed Mobius and Loki drinking this soda. So I don't know if that was from season 1 or season 2. It was in like a red can.
Oh, I think it's in season 1. What if I search Loki soda? Yeah, Josta.
Yes.
Yeah, so I remember Mobius drank it. Yeah.
Yeah, so they showed it. They showed it on this thing. They're saying it was. Yeah, so it was in season 1 of Loki. Which okay, so that I could have just looked at it before, but I didn't. So I wasn't sure if maybe that was something from like season 2 that was going to happen. But I don't really remember it from season 1. I thought maybe it was a brand they made up just for the series. Apparently, that was real.
Yeah, they kind of they got a bigger marketing budget this year. They're dealing with McDonald's and not Josta sodas.
So let's talk about McDonald's, okay?
Yeah, we did last week. Let's talk about them again.
I know I've said this before. I love the nostalgia of that old school McDonald's. The uniforms, the old school cash registers. I watched the video I sent you, or that talked about how there's a McDonald's historian, and he helped them with props and gave them like videos and footage and various other things of what outside of the restaurants look like, inside of the restaurants look like, what their menu boards look like, what their prices were like back in the day. He sent them over a bunch of stuff for them to use on set. I guess they were filming in England, he said. So he sent them over a bunch of stuff for them to use, so they didn't have to recreate it. This was just amazing to me. And, even like something as far as like the cups, like I remember those cups. The only thing that was missing, like I said last week, is the cigarette smoke in the McDonald's. And like you said, they don't allow smoking. But they did allow an a-hole and some other stuff in this episode this week, which was a little weird for me. But
Yeah, I wasn't alive in the 80s, so for me, I'm like looking at the cups and I'm like, oh, those are interesting because I'm so used to like their more recent cups and stuff like that. But apparently, her outfit is completely accurate for the time. Bring those back. Why they just wear gray polos now? Can't we get a little bit more colorful? It's McDonald's. Come on, it's a clown. A clown is the mascot.
They don't have the clown anymore. He's been like Ronald has been like semi-retired because
you know what though, they'll bring him back for his birthday because they did with Grimace, just so they could sell a purple milkshake.
They brought Grimace back because Grimace was kind of a forgotten character, but between the fact that there's a lot of people who are scared of clowns, and what was it 2020 when they had the whole issue with people were dressing as like evil clowns. There's a bunch of weird.
I think it was actually before then. It feels not that long ago, but I think it was before 2020.
Something like that.
Before COVID.
That's kind of when they pushed Ronald in the semi-retirement there. So, you know who used to play Ronald McDonald? Willard Scott.
Really?
Willard Scott was Ronald McDonald back in the day.
Huh. I hope Ronald's doing okay. The guy that played him like my whole life. I hope he's all right.
Well, there was a guy. I watched a whole video on that a while back. I went down a rabbit hole. There was Willard Scott for a while. Then they changed it up. There was a guy from like the 70s up until like 85. Then there was a guy from like 85 on until like 96 or something.
I'm trying to Google who plays Ronald McDonald right now. 2014 to now, Brad Lennon. They also had somebody from 2000 to 2014. So there's been 3 in my life.
They need to bring back like the Fry Guys and Birdie and the Hamburglar and stuff like that.
Yeah.
McCheese. Bring those guys back.
Oh man, no, yeah. The 1963 Ronald McDonald is a nightmare. Don't look that up. That's the Willard Scott one. But bring back the colorful costume. I hate I understand this whole trend of being like more modern and sleek and stuff, but look, you can modernize this outfit. I don't know. It just seems like McDonald's is all gray now. Like, they got like the chic, modern look that has like that's almost like fake wood, but it looks like nice wood. And then they're all wearing like gray polos and like gray hats or black hats. It's like, come on, Sylvie looks pretty good in this. Let's get back to having some fun.
So with Sylvie in there, the fact that she's working at McDonald's, I'm kind of curious. I know she's a god, right? She's a variant of Loki, so she's a god. She's a trickster. How did she get like paperwork in order to like work there?
It was the 80s. Nobody cared.
Maybe. You might be right. But especially in the middle of Oklahoma with a British accent, right? Like, I can't imagine there was many Brits.
Well, mischief. She's got a mischief. She probably just snapped up some documents.
I'm just saying, I can't imagine there was many Brits wandering around the middle of Oklahoma in 1982. Like, you're gonna stand out.
Yeah.
And if, honestly, this is probably the wrong way to think about it, if you're someone with a British accent roaming around the middle of Oklahoma in 1982, either you're on run from like a bunch of drug dealers or you're on run from the law. Like, I can't imagine you just randomly deciding that's where you're going to settle down.
Look, I think the real answer to that is, what's the kid's name? Jack?
The manager
or something. Manager. Look,
he looks like he's in charge.
He just needs to make sure they are staffed up. He doesn't care. His mom's picking him up after work. He's like, look, just work, and that's fine.
Look, I thought that was going to take a different turn there for a second. I'm glad Sylvie checked on him.
Sexual
like, hey,
turn or like she's the mom turn? Like, what was the...
Oh, okay, number one, I'm glad she checked on him to be like, hey, is your mom coming to pick you up? Like, oh, that was awesome to see. Because he's either like a very young man, or he's a teenager, maybe 18, 19. I don't know. Right? Number two, yeah, not sexual, but I thought it was going to take a turn into like, hey, so do you want to go out sometime or something? Because he was kind of hanging around there and it was a little awkward. And that was like that awkward teenage phase. And I was like, is he going to ask Sylvie out? A, I mean, good choice. Sylvie's a very attractive woman. B, like, I don't know if this is going to work out for you, dude.
Bit of an age gap. So I would say I was even thinking like, oh, what if like we see the mom pick her up and it's Sylvie, like a variant of Sylvie, like another Loki variant, and that's why I don't know. Like, do you think we see any more of this McDonald's again? Because the way she's looking at that tempad, the He Who Remains tempad that she has at the end, I'm thinking she's not going to show up to work tomorrow, even though she told him she would.
I think we might get one more episode out of McDonald's, but
I guess it all depends how much McDonald's is paying, right?
I can't imagine it's going. I'll be honest. Now I kind of, after seeing that, because I just watched it before we got on to record this, I kind of all of a sudden had a craving for McDonald's. So
I did that last week. Last Friday, I had McDonald's after we watched it on Thursday, and I was thinking about it all day Friday as we were ready to record, and I ate McDonald's for like lunch or dinner last Friday.
And Mobius with the apple pie. Back in the 80s, that apple pie was great. So Mobius was definitely hitting on the apple pie. But I think we get one more episode out of McDonald's. Maybe like either they go back to get her, or she shows back up one last, like she's there one last time, and then decides like, hey, I need to go help him out, and then heads back to the TVA. But I can't imagine. And then maybe in the end, depending what happens, because we talked about it last week. In the comics, I guess this turned into a new, different type Asgard for the Asgardians in the comics. So this place in Oklahoma. So I could see it maybe going back. And I can imagine an Asgardian McDonald's.
Yeah, well, I think that's interesting because one of my friends who's been on the show before, Jack, he said, well, okay, all of the timelines are pruned, right? And I was like, well, I don't think so. Because while it does look like most are pruned at the end of this episode, she does go back to, she says, I'm going back home if it still exists. She goes back to that McDonald's. She talks to the manager. So obviously that branch timeline still exists. I'm sure there's some others that still exist. No, we already knew it was on a branched one before, and he recognizes her, so I would assume that it's still the branched timeline. Yeah. So we also had in this episode, they get Brad, they break him down. Loki goes back to his old ways, right? Of a little bit of torture, to make sure he gets what he needs to get. And they're trying to get to Sylvie. He says he'll take them to Sylvie. So he did find her at some point, and then he decided, forget this, I'm going to be a movie star.
Well, hey, let's talk about the fact that he brought up a very good point when he was talking with Loki and Mobius. Like he tells Loki, you're not a hero, you're a villain. Like, now I know Loki has, in the course of the Infinity Saga, we've seen him go straight from being like the villain of the first Avengers, right? The main villain of the first Avengers. And through the other Thor movies and everything else, he's kind of made some twists and turns where he was still evilish. Doctor, like as I talked about in like Austin Powers, he was like the Diet Coke of evil, just one calorie, not evil enough, right? But he was like playing both sides and stuff, and he always had like some other plan going on or whatever. But he's still ultimately a villain. I mean, and to see him kind of...
Well, especially this one, right? Like, this one didn't live through all of that, right? He left at the end of Battle of New York. He gets shown his future by Mobius, right? He gets shown it, and he sees his mom die, and he sees all that stuff, and he kind of gets caught up to the moment of Endgame. But he never actually had that growth. He's kind of going through it right now by trying to, fix this.
I forgot about it. He he was the Loki that disappeared at the end of Endgame, or in the middle of Endgame, when whatever it was that happened, Hulk came out of the elevator, started causing havoc, and then he disappeared with the Tesseract. I forgot about that he is not the main Loki. That did have that growth and like gave up his life for Thor and in Infinity War, stuff like that. Like his time ended at the Battle of New York. You're right. He has no clue about everything else that happened.
So it's funny when he has seen it, but he hasn't lived it. It's funny when he mentions the Battle of New York and he talks about trying to use the stone on Tony and all that kind of stuff. Like for him, he's referencing something that didn't happen that long ago, but he has had a change of heart a bit. And we also I really like the scene where Mobius is just frustrated walking and then they end up with all the pies and they get the key lime pie. It's just, especially when, their little banter is just always a highlight for me. Like as they walk in there and Loki's like, I was following you, and Mobius is like, I was following you, and he said, I was clearly behind you.
Yeah. You want to let's get a piece of pie. Okay, key lime. Not a bad choice.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be my first choice, but I wouldn't turn it away. I'm
really like only an apple pie guy.
I can do apple, I can do pumpkin, I can do sweet potato.
I don't like pumpkin.
Cherry, I like sweet potato. Occasionally. Lemon meringue is really underrated.
I don't think I've had that.
And then
like my dad makes pies. He usually makes apple pies and like pecan pies. I usually only eat the apple one. My wife is actually allergic to pecans, so we can't eat that anyway. But we eat the apple ones. And the apple pies that he makes are really good. So that's kind of like my go-to pie. But I never really had like I don't know, where would you even get a pie? Are there even that many pie shops around anymore?
Yes, there's actually pie shops or some places that sell nothing but pies.
Really?
And they're great.
Right now we get them from like the grocery store. They have them in the bakery section. But sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not.
There has to be a pie shop around you. You're in a pretty metropolitanized area there. There has to be an actual like pie shop around.
I'll have to look it up.
When I went to Colorado earlier this year, me and my friend went out and there was a pie shop when we went to go visit the Stanley Hotel, which is the hotel from The Shining. So we went to go. There was a pie shop there, so we went, and it was great because they cut like these pieces of like 4 or 5 different pies to put together to make you your own pie to go. So it's like, I'll take some of like apples, and then they have like different variants of apple and stuff. So it was great. But yeah, pies.
Have you seen Pushing Daisies?
I have not.
So it's a TV show, only lasted 2 years, but it features a pie shop pretty heavily. So that's like my biggest impression of a pie shop. Okay, so then also in this, when they break down with Brad finally gives, but he's a little squeamish, a little squirrelish, right? He wants to go. He wants to leave as soon as they get there. And Mobius finally puts it together that this is not really a setup at this point. I don't think Brad really was trying to set them up, but this is going to get bombed. And we see General Docs in her, hidden bunker that they get into, but she's sending all these people out with just tons and tons of the bombs to reset the timelines to end those and prune them. And they kind of lose. They are only able to stop a little bit of the destruction, and Sylvie follows Loki and Mobius back to the TVA and sees that kind of sees how all dejected they are, but she still kind of is like, this is all you could do, and I think she feels a little slighted by the TVA, and she has this cold relationship with Loki. I really liked them kind of meeting back up again and it not being like immediately fixed. I think this is going to be something that we kind of have to keep thawing the relationship out between them. And I really like that because, I mean, to be fair, Loki is still kind of on the side of we cannot have branched timelines. He's kind of been the one saying that because he's worried about all of the variants of Kang coming back. So, you know, they're
Okay,
still
two
on kind of
questions.
opposite sides.
2 questions for you. One, do you think the guy only got a milkshake because that's all he wanted, or did Mobius not offer to buy him like a hamburger and fries? Because it's kind of rude. Number 2, you had the was it X5? What's her?
Yeah.
What's her
Oh, X-15. Yeah.
X-15.
B-15. Sorry. B-15. X5 is the guy. Yeah.
B-15, where she's kind of sad because she's like, these are billions of people. So I don't think we've asked you this. Where do you feel? Do you feel there should just be one timeline? Or do you feel there should be these branching timelines where all these other things that can happen that we have no clue?
Well, we kind of get this with Obi too, right? Obi is trying to fix the temporal loom to be able to handle multiple timelines. It's kind of what he's been working on. We do get the great scene too with Obi and Casey's like memorized the manual, and he's, in love with Obi writing this thing and gets his autograph.
That's not Casey's Casey's B-15 or whatever, B-5.
No. B-15 doesn't have a name. She's just B-15. Casey is the guy who's the janitor.
Well, he's not really a janitor. He's doing a bunch of other stuff too.
Yeah, but I mean, he was like sweeping mopping the floor last week.
Something still tells me there's something else going on with this book.
Second week in a row, right?
Mobius can't really comprehend it because he's like it's confusing, and he's seen a bunch of other.
I love that scene when they're both trying to fix the tempad, and Loki's asking for what Mobius is reading, and he's like, I've read the thing, like I don't understand what it's saying, and they're like kind of bickering back and forth, it reminds me of like an old married couple who's like trying to figure out how to work the TV or something, and they're like, I got the manual.
Yeah, how to program the VCR there.
Yeah.
But and then obviously, so Casey knows a little bit more than what he seems like too. He's my spidey sense is going off about him a little bit this season because there seems to be a little more, especially since I know him from The Good Place where he played what's his name, Jason's buddy there in The Good Place.
Yes,
he's just kind of like this dope, but he's like this character's great for him. I love it. But yeah, there's something going on with this book. I don't know what else is in there. I'm gonna hate it if we get to like the last episode and we get to like, oh, if you'd have just read through the book, like the last couple pages, the last chapter deals with how to how to solve this problem. We could have avoided all this had you just read my book. And it comes to find out that Obi is actually what's his name, Kang there in a different variant skin.
That'd be a twist.
If we'd have just read the book, but nobody wanted to read the book, so
that'd be a twist. Are we gonna cast Ki-Hu Kwan for if Jonathan Majors stays in trouble here?
Dude, why not? He's kind of hot right now.
Yeah.
He's got a good thing going. I mean, I'd love to see him play a bad guy too. That would be great.
By the way, Eugene Cordero is who plays Casey, and he played Pillboy in The Good Place. Yes, Pillboy.
When he had the mustache on after he locked Jason in the gun vault.
Yes.
It was just great because she just brung up her manager like, yeah, we're being robbed. No, we're not. With the horrible mustache. Oh, that was great.
That was a good show. It only lasted 4 years, but they got to tell their whole story, so that was good. Okay, so then so we have, you're asking me about where I kind of stand on the multiple timelines or not. I think if they can get it working with the temporal loom and have it be multiple timelines, I think that's good, right? Like Sylvie, pro free will here. Uh the downside to all of that would of course be all of the Kangs that are going to be coming, but I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of wondering where they go with this because we've seen the past, right? So we saw the past. Loki was there. He Who Remains had his face all over the place, and then he mind wipes everyone at some point, and then it puts the three timekeepers instead and becomes more anonymous. Why is that? Did something go wrong when he was the face of it? What made him think that was a bad idea? Is it something we're going to see in this, meaning that because Loki time slipped and maybe at some point they do go back in time again and he kind of causes the issue that makes He Who Remains go more anonymous, and it's kind of like this cycle, kind of like we were talking about with Terminator on our other show, the
Yeah.
cycle of did this cause the thing that they were trying to prevent type of thing, or is that not really important and we're going to see multiple other Kangs come up and try to take over thing. Here's where I'm thinking. What we kind of got, right? Miss Minutes isn't able to help. And Obi says we would need like a frontal lobe scan, right? Of He Who Remains, the person that made this place.
Yeah.
My thought is from the end credit scene of Quantumania, where we see Victor Timely and Loki and Mobius are there, and it's like 1800s, 1920s type of time frame. Victor Timely. I'm thinking that they decide they have to go back and find one of these Kangs to do the scan of the frontal lobe or whatever, so that way they can fix the temporal lobe. The issue with that, though, I think, might lead Victor Timely to become He Who Remains later down the line after this multiversal war at some point. That's my theory just from all of this at this point.
So my thought is, I think He Who Remains is still in this world somehow. Because he created, like you said, he was there, he was in charge, things weren't going right, so then he created the timekeepers and everything. He Men in Blacks everybody, wipes their mind, right? So now they just think of the three timekeepers. But he's still got to kind of keep an eye on what's going on here. Like, you can't just do like you do a kid in the 80s, speaking of like 1982, where it's like, hey, I'm going to work. I'll be back. Make sure the house is clean by the time I get back. Because as we know from an 80s movie, there'll be a wild house party and then everything will be cleaned up before you get back. But that's why I don't think it's Obi. I think that would just be too weird. But I think he's still around in some way, shape, or form, keeping an eye on this. Just because he kind of has to. Like, he can't just let things go, because who knows where it's going to be from that point. There has to be someone there. He has to be around in some way, shape, or form to still keep an eye on this and make sure things are going a certain way. So I think he's still around, and we just don't know who it is yet.
And they're also tracking Ravonna Renslayer at the same time, and they find out
that?
Loki
I can't
brings
forget
up.
Who that is.
She was the one that was Mobius's boss in the first season.
Okay, I forgot about the first season pretty much already.
Yeah, Google her. She'll probably make your memory come up. But she was the one that was helping. She knew like the timekeepers were fake and all that, and she was helping He Who Remains. So they know that they were working together. Loki kind of pieced that together due to, in the past, he heard a conversation that was the tape that was playing when he was in the conference room before he time slipped into the future again. And they were tracking her tempad. So I think we're going to see her maybe next week as we're going to get more information on
they brought her up too many times this week. For
Yeah.
it to just be like, say this name and then that's it. But you don't get anything after that.
Yeah. So I think for sure we'll see her next week, probably getting closer to finding out more information about He Who Remains. That's when they might be able to find out where to go find a version of him to be able to scan his brain that they need to reset the temporal loom. That's my thought. There was also some other Easter eggs I wanted to share too. At the movie premiere, there's also a poster for a movie starring Kingo, who's from the Eternals. That's Kumail Nanjiani's character from Eternals, who was a movie star in that as well. So, cool little nod there. There's also a poster for, I guess, a movie based off of a very obscure Marvel hero. If we want to talk about Brad Wolf being Z-list, this is negative list, right? I mean, character called Phone Ranger. In the original comics, Phone Ranger is an incredibly obscure hero whose real name is A.G. Bell, and Bell was a telephone repairman who discovered alien tech, giving him access to all communication devices across the world, and he briefly fought crime as Phone Ranger. He appeared only 3 times in the entirety of Marvel Comics continuity, 1985, 2006, and 2019.
Okay. We got to stop with making new superheroes. Like, we're reaching the bottom of the barrel. We're getting to the point.
It was the 80s.
What was the Ben Stiller comic book guy?
Mystery Men.
Yeah, where Dan Cook played like the Waffler and stuff. Like we're getting.
Yeah,
like, we're
Dana Carvey is the turtle.
We're getting really like, okay, guys, enough is enough. One thing I forgot until I saw this episode, that Loki is a god and he has magical powers.
Yes, he doesn't use it that much in the movies at all. It was nice to see him, using some shadow tricks. He even fools Mobius. Mobius goes up to a different one of the 3 Lokis talking. Yeah.
But like,
and then
he's a god,
the one on the
he's
right,
trickster god, and he has magical powers and can do those things. And it was like,
oh, the best part was when Brad is running away from him and he's going through all of these people, and then all of the people were Loki's projections. That was pretty cool too.
Like, you forget how powerful he was, and a part of it could be because they kind of, I don't want to say neutered him, but they managed to kind of take away his powers at the beginning of the last season, where maybe just in the TVA his powers didn't work, or they
magic didn't work there. Yeah,
but it was one of those things. Yeah, I completely forgot about that until like he started doing those things, and I was like, oh yeah, he can do some stuff. Like, we need to see some more of this. Sorry, I didn't mean to stop you. What other?
No, that's good. No, yeah, that's good because I wanted to bring that up too because it was really cool to see him using his powers. Let's see, any other real. I mean, like I said, she has He Who Remains talisman. It looks different. That's the other tempad type thing that He Who Remain had. It's got like the cracked lines on it instead of being more of a tempad situation. We have Loki referencing his past with the Avengers I talked about. We get a reference to Loki's mom because Brad brings her up. And
I thought that was going to set him off right there.
Yeah, same. He kept his cool. Loki was doing a very good job in this episode of keeping everything chill.
So
those are the Easter eggs. Yeah, go ahead.
Would you want to know more about Mobius's life before the TVA?
I would. And you know what? They bring it up in this. I think that means for sure we're going to see it. Right? You can't bring that up.
Like,
yeah.
We don't know anything about Mobius. As far as we know, he was just like, poof, he was made in the TVA. That's all he does. Just like, I don't know, like everyone else, they're like, how do they get there? Is there a recruitment site you got to go on to? Like, Like, is there like a super secret cipher you got to figure out, like for the CIA? Like,
Well, since
how do
they're
you end
all
up working on
variants, I think the way they do it is for some people, when they capture them, instead of disintegrating them or doing whatever they did to them when they prune them, for some of them they kept around and trained them how to be mind wipe them and then train them how to be TVA agents is kind of
So,
what vibe I get.
so does that mean Casey is a variant of Pillboy?
Yes, let's get the crossover going of Good Place and Loki,
Yeah,
please.
he's a Pillboy variant from Jacksonville, from Duval County.
Yeah. Who was the quarterback they were obsessed with? Blaine Gabbert? Is that who it was?
Blake Bortles.
Oh, it's Blake Bortles. Oh, yeah.
Duval.
Jeez,
yeah.
it was.
Yeah. Man, if he gave like a Duval shout out or something there, I would lose it. I would not be able to stop laughing for the entire next podcast. But I'm curious to like, I would definitely like to know. I mean, I don't need a whole series, but like I just like that had me started thinking like,
we're gonna get it.
Where did
we're gonna
Mobius
see
come
Mosby?
from? Like,
we're gonna see Mobius riding a jet ski in his other life, and I think that'll be like. It depends on how he reacts to it, right? That's kind of why he doesn't want to know, right? He says it could be really bad, but it could be really good, and then he knows that he's missing out on something very good. And we know his favorite thing that he ever wants to do is ride a jet ski. I wouldn't be shocked if that's what his other variant is doing, and it either makes him happy in the sense of, at least that guy of me is living the dream, or he might resent it a bit. Or you can even take it even better where he has an awful life outside of here, and he sees how much the TVA and him being friends with Loki and all of them has made his life better, and he knows he's not missing anything. That's one way you can go with it too.
So do you think any of these people who work at the TVA try and look up and see what their other variants and their lives are like, or
I think now they will.
Would you want it?
Would you wanna? That's a tough question. Like if I was in the TVA, would I want to?
Yeah. Would you want to like?
I think I couldn't stop. I think I would have to look. I'm a curious mind. And then I would go look at every lottery winner, and I would go back in time and buy the lottery ticket.
You see, you can't mess with timelines though.
Branch timeline. No, it's going to be okay. We're going to fix the temporal loom, and we're going to have branch timelines, and I'm going to be a billionaire.
But you know me. I mean, we've talked about it before. I look up spoilers and stuff online. Like, I haven't done it with Loki this season, but for other stuff, I've looked up. Like, I don't mind getting spoiled or whatever. I still want to watch it and see the journey, how we get there. So for me, yeah, I would definitely be like, what is... I don't know how I would figure it out, but I would start at like, okay, variant 001. What is this guy doing? Oh, he's a crackhead. All right, well, sucks to be you. Variant 002. Oh, this guy became president of the United States. And then every now and then, like, okay, we're going to bookmark him and come back to him later and check on him. Variant 003. And keep going, because you got nothing but time. So.
True, yeah. I mean, we know that they've been living there for hundreds of years without any issues. No aging. That's the life.
Do we even know if they can do something like that?
Yeah, I think they had blocked... I'm trying to remember. I just watched season 1. I think there was a way that they blocked out certain things so that way people wouldn't know. But somehow B-15 found out because she took the other agent that helps them, the guy agent that I don't know the name of, that was like standing outside of like Brad Wolf's cell and like was talking to them too. He, I think, was the one that was chasing her, B-15, and then Ravonna Renslayer walks in the room and he acknowledges her as Ravonna Renslayer, and the person doesn't react, and she's like, they're in a school, and we find out that Ravona's variant is just a teacher at a school. And that was kind of like the wake up call to that guy that, oh, these are all variants. But I don't know how, I forget how B-15 found that out. But Ravona was able to see it too, because she actually kept some of the pencils from the school. And that's Mobius kept a pencil from there. So maybe that's how B-15 found out. I forget. But I think for most people, they're not able to look it up, but I would assume with the change now of them being more pro multiple timelines, they probably are allowing it a little bit more than they would have.
Okay, so I just looked up who Renslayer was. I actually now have a much better idea of who she was, and it's like I can't believe we haven't seen this character yet. So obviously, I think we will see her in the next couple episodes. But I forgot about her. Like I forgot that character was even around.
Yeah, we got to find out where she went, where she's at currently. And Miss Minutes is still missing. No, she was somebody that worked with He Who Remains. Is she with Renslayer? Is she just hiding out somewhere? Because, Loki kind of told them you can't trust Miss Minutes last week. So they've been doing stuff a little bit more manual without Miss Minutes' help because
Miss Minutes was. I forgot who she was.
You forgot the cartoon clock?
I didn't know they gave her a name. Like,
she's a standout of the show.
She was cool, don't get me wrong, but I didn't I forgot they gave her a name and she was like this autonomous character. Like, I mean, I just
because you think she's just programming or something, but she's honestly she does enough.
I thought it was I forgot it was a character. I thought it was just like kind of like a Ronald McDonald. Yeah, something they made up for like explaining like the TVA to people that when they get there and various other things. So I thought it was just like a character they made up. I didn't know it was real in the world of the TVA.
Okay. Anything else about the episode?
No, that's about it for me.
By the way, the clown sightings for Ronald McDonald and all that, the clown sightings, were 2016. It's been that long already.
7 years, Jesus.
Yeah.
We're only 6 years away from the machines doing horrible things. So.
Yeah, I guess we should plug that again. So today we launched our Goonies episode of Films for the very first time. Goonies also stars Ke Huy Quan. And
yes, I forgot about that.
Yeah, so we're doing connective tissue here on our podcast. So yeah, you can check that out. Films for the very first time. Search that on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast. You should be able to find it. We have our first 3 episodes. The way if the title doesn't give it away, it is I pick a film, Casey picks a film, I pick a film, and we pick films that the other one hasn't seen. So first week he picked Pulp Fiction, I'd never seen it. Second week I picked Airplane, Casey had never seen that, and now we watched The Goonies, which I had never seen, and we talked about that. So you can check that out if you're interested in films and just discussion of films, or you want to hear me and Casey ramble on for even more. You may have heard me mention Terminator in this earlier. That is part of that. We're just recording those so far in advance. So that is an episode that's coming later on down the pike here. So keep an eye out for those. What else do I have currently? Well, I wrapped up all of our Ahsoka coverage on The Pod Awakens. I'm taking a week or 2 off of that before we come back with some more episodes of other things. Speaking of Marvel, one episode that I'm doing on my Star Wars podcast is if Star Wars was released today, where would you put post-credit scenes? And what would those post-credit scenes be? So my friend Logan and I are writing those for the films. And the only rule is you cannot break canon. So if you don't like a film, you can't have the post-credit scene be like, that movie never exists. It's like the main part of this. So we're working on that. That episode should be coming in in a week or two over on the Pod Awakens. Elseworlds, the DC podcast that's also on this feed, just is going to release an episode where we talk about the 1996 comic event Kingdom Come, written by Mark Waid. My friend Chris and I talked about that comic run that'll be releasing this weekend. Do you have something, Casey?
Well, I do. I guess it'll tie into Marvel, so it does. It's Marvel, very Marvel specific. But you just brought up post-credit scenes, right? We didn't get one this week, so I waited till my window shrank and I started going to like French and Spanish, and I was like, okay, there's no post.
Yeah, I did the same thing.
But do you think Marvel ruined some things in cinema by introducing the post-credit scenes? Or do you think it was a good thing?
I think it's a good thing because it makes people stick around and see the names of the people that worked on the movies. I don't ever think that is a bad thing. I used to get up and leave right away on a movie. Even movies I know don't have post-credit scenes, I usually now sit there and actually watch and, let other people go in front of me. I kind of digest the movie I just watched. I'm watching the names. I'm listening to the music. There's some movies that have really good, soundtracks, music as it's going. So I think it is a good thing. It can get a little overboard when you have some, like I was making a joke. My wife was watching this movie called Young Victoria, I think it was. It's leaving Netflix. It's Emily Blunt.
What movie?
2009, like Queen Victoria movie. And at the end of the movie, they have like all the like captions come up, that say like Queen Victoria reigned for this long and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then it goes to credits, and I turned to my wife. I was like, are they going to do a post-credit scene where it sets up like the next queen or something? Like, just as a joke of like, because sometimes that happens in movies now. They'll just, like, any movie can have a post-credit scene, really. Marvel wasn't the first. They're definitely the ones that popularized it a lot. And the only downside I have of that, Casey, is people that expect those to be either really groundbreaking or that they're going to pay off very soon. I think that's the biggest downside to the ones post Endgame, are that they're setting up projects that seem to be so far out. So when I sit there and watch a post-credit scene now, we usually get two. You usually get the mid-credit scene, which maybe matters more to the plot. And then nowadays, it seems like the second one is like a comedic one. Some of those are not paying off in the next 5 years, probably. And that's probably going to be more of a problem that we're having with it. Yeah. Well, because that's like, so I went to see Return of the Jedi in the movies. That's what made me think of this idea. As I was, I'm so accustomed to going to these movies now, sitting through the credits, and I'm doing that with Return of the Jedi, even though we have it at home. I went to the movies for the 40th anniversary. We watched it. I love the Star Wars music that plays. So I'm sitting there watching the credits, and I'm like, had the thought of, okay, now that we have episode 7 and we have all these TV shows that take place after episode 6, wouldn't it be funny if they just stuck a post-credit scene in here, like teasing something? And then I was like, what would you even tease? Would you tease the TV shows? Would you tease episode 7 that takes place 30 years after? Like, and that's where this idea started running through my mind and trying to find, how I would add post-credit scenes in these.
I think for me, Marvel did a good job with some of them. Obviously, your ones like the Iron Man one, where you get Nick Fury showing up and basically talking about the Avengers Initiative. I had no clue what that was, and I had a buddy who explained to me, "Oh, it's the Avengers. It's all these guys together." Okay, cool. So we know there's this was before like the MCU was the MCU, and you knew eventually like they were all gonna team up, right? Unless Iron Man 1 failed horribly, then there wasn't gonna be team up. But we know they did. That's the way we had. What was it? What was the one where they introduced Quicksilver and Wanda?
Oh, it was before Age of Ultron.
Was it Captain? Was it Captain? No, I don't know if it was Captain.
No.
Wasn't Iron Man 2? Was it Iron Man 3?
No, because Iron Man 3's was just them sitting on the. It was Winter Soldier.
Yeah, I think it was Winter Soldier. It was Winter Soldier.
Because it dealt with Hydra after they just got done Hydra, right?
You had two. You had the one where he showed up in the museum, looking at everything, and then the other one was where Hydra talked about they had the two. I don't forget what name they gave them. The twins. I think it was.
They said the twins, yeah.
Because they couldn't use certain terms because Fox owned the rights and all this other stuff. So.
It was better. See, that's the thing. It was those post-credit scenes were better when it set up like the immediate next movie, but now they like are setting up movies with the characters from that movie. And since we're having bigger gaps between those, right? Like Shang-Chi came out 2 years ago. We have no idea when we're seeing him again. And it's like those post-credit scenes mean nothing right now. You can watch them. They still haven't been, even close to revealed. So
I mean, and that's the thing for me is, like I said, they did a great job with some of them where it led you to like, hey, what's happening? What's going to go on next? Some of them haven't paid off. I don't know if it's. I can't discount what you're saying about seeing the people who, having the people's names who made the movie and were part of the crew, getting their moment to shine. I'll be honest with you, I very rarely ever look at them. A lot of times I'm like turning my phone back on and responding to messages that I missed and various other things. I will, if anything, maybe I'll probably wait for like the songs to come up because I'm trying to figure out maybe who did certain songs if I can't remember it in my head that played during the movie or like, stuff like that. Oh yeah, that's right. That's who made that song that, was during the bar scene, stuff like that. But I think I've read online, people working in movie theaters absolutely hate them now. Because, like you said, it used to be credits came up, the lights came on, people started going, and then those guys can come in and they can take care of the mess that all you people leave in the movie theater.
With how many showings they stack, they gotta have time to clean.
But now they can start in some places, but now a lot of times they're sitting there waiting on the side because like they gotta wait for everybody to leave. But now there's a gaggle of like 50 people waiting for a post-credit scene so they can just see something. And then it's like, come on, man. Like, I got to clean up this theater. And they might know if there is or isn't one, but they can't really tell you, So.
I just Google. I Google right beforehand. Is there one or two? Is there any?
That's the thing now. And within like a day or two, you can find out on a couple different sites, one that will give no spoilers. Is there a post-credit scene for insert movie here? And it'll tell you without spoilers. There's a mid-credit scene and no end-credit scene, or just an end-credit scene, or there's no scene. It'll give you that information. The other one, it'll tell you everything you want to know. You can get the whole spoiler treatment if you want. So,
I accidentally got spoiled on the post-credit scene for Dark World, which is where they take it to the collector. And it was setting up Guardians. Because I was on my college program in Florida. And I was fully Marvel obsessed at that time. I still am. But I mean, like, that was the height, right? And that was like before I had other stuff to occupy my time all the time. Like when we only got 2 movies a year or whatever. And I remember reading that and being like, I wish I hadn't read that, but it was fine. I still enjoyed. I think I also got spoiled on Howard the Duck being in the post-credit scene of Guardians, which I was like, oh man, I don't know if I wanted to know that, but I still enjoyed the scene when he showed up.
But like you said, that goes back to like you said, there's been no payoff on that, so Like, are they gonna do a Howard the Duck series or Howard?
Oh,
the
he
Duck
showed up
movie?
3 times. There's been plenty of follow up.
He showed up in Endgame, like he was actually in Endgame to help fight Thanos and his people, right?
And he was in Guardians 3 too.
I get that, but what I'm saying is like, are they gonna? Is there gonna be a solo Howard the Duck adventure anytime, or like honestly,
After the performance of the George Lucas one, I would assume no.
Okay, but you never know. Like I that was also back in the 80s. Like I didn't know.
Yeah.
Nobody knew anything about Howard the Duck before. I didn't even know Howard the Duck was a Marvel thing until until that came out, and I was like, wait, Howard the Duck's part of Marvel? Like, what is going on here?
Yep. Okay. Anything else about that? I know we kind of went on a post-credit scene tangent there, but I think that's most of the episode. Yeah. So just remember predictions. We probably see Victor Timely next week or the week after, and we probably get Ravonna next week. I'm hoping for both next week. I think that would be really great.
It's a lot to cram into 50 minutes.
I'm happy they've all been like 50 minutes though, too. I think season 1 may have been a little shorter at times. This one's been so far starting off pretty lengthy, and like I said, I love the way that they're feeling like actual weekly episodes and having kind of plot lines that last a whole episode instead of just being like, all right, we got to cut this episode and then next week it's going to be something else. Like, we're going to continue that. I like that we're getting almost like A plots, B plot type things in these episodes. All right. Well, if you want to give us a follow, our socials are in the description below. In the show notes, you can catch it there as well. I always tweet out Casey's handle as well when he's on. So if you want to follow Casey and see what movie he's watching this week all the time, you just watched Megan, didn't you?
Yeah, I watched that last night for the first time.
Was it good?
I enjoyed it. I can definitely see a Megan universe. I enjoyed it. It's not very scary. There's not a lot of gore. It actually had a PG-13 rating.
Who wins, Megan or Chucky? In a fight.
Which version of Chucky are we talking about?
I don't know. How many versions are there? I mean, they have tons of movies, but I mean...
Well, there's at least 2 distinct versions. You have the version from the original Child's Play, which was like a My Buddy doll. It was called a Good Guys doll.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That a serial killer who knew voodoo put his soul into, that was trying to get his soul out of a doll back into someone else, right? So he's actually a human soul trapped in the doll. And then there's the newer version that came out a few years ago, which was it came out before Megan did, which was an artificial intelligence android type thing.
Okay. Well,
so
okay, do the guy, the serial killer guy trapped in the Chucky doll versus Megan. Who wins?
I think Megan does, because it is a computer learning thing. It is a AI, and it's constantly learning. And if you watch the movie, like you can tell how it learns throughout the course of the entire movie. Plus the My Buddy, the Good Guy doll is like 2 feet tall. Megan's like 4 feet tall, so she's like the size of an actual like teenage girl. And she's always connected to the internet, so she's got the computer learning thing.
Wow.
Even the unrated version wasn't gory or anything at all last night, so it wasn't bad. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, unrated versions rarely are. They're like, it's really just a technical term of, we didn't send this one to the MPA to get rated. People slap that on everything.
So I think for this one, it might have been more of the language as well. Because I think with PG-13, you can get like 1 or 2 F-bombs in.
Yeah, you can get, for sure, 1. I've seen it stretched to 2, I think, as long as they're not used sexually.
Yeah, but like, you're limited, but you can still get an F-bomb or 2 in there. some other swears in there that you can kind of work with and stuff like that. But this one had a few more than 2. So I mean, it wasn't like a Tarantino movie, so you weren't getting F-bombs like every couple minutes, like Samuel L. Jackson throwing them out there. But like, especially later in the movie, especially later in the movie, you're getting they're coming a little more, from out of nowhere. So I enjoyed it. I got a couple more days vacation. I'm trying to figure out what movies I'm going to watch over the next couple of days.
I know one of them. It's going to take 4 hours of your time. Boy. Yeah, so check us out at Films for the Very First Time, too, and you'll get our discussions on all sorts of films. Thank you all for watching and listening. We'll catch you next time when we talk Loki Episode 3.